The first snowflake hit my kitchen window on a Tuesday morning in late January. I watched it spiral down from the grey sky, then another, then a dozen more. My coffee mug paused halfway to my lips as I stared at the weather alert flashing on my phone. Winter storm warning, heavy snow, high winds, potential power outages. I'd been an electrical engineer for 23 years. I knew what this meant. My home sat at the edge of Pinecrest Meadows, a sprawling HOA community where every mailbox looked identical and every lawn maintained the exact same half-inch grass height from April through October. I'd moved here 5 years ago after my divorce, thinking the structure and rules might bring some order to my chaotic life. What I got instead was Diane Crenshaw. Diane was the HOA president, a position she treated like a military dictatorship. She was in her mid-50s, always dressed in pastel cardigans with matching statement necklaces, and she wielded the HOA rulebook like a weapon. I'd received 17 violation notices in 5 years. 17. For things like my trash can being visible from the street for 4 extra hours, or planting tulips instead of the approved daffodils in my front garden. But this morning, I wasn't thinking about Diane or her petty violations. I was thinking about the grid. I pulled up the county power map on my laptop. Pinecrest Meadows was serviced by a single main transformer station, with outdated infrastructure that had been flagged for upgrades 3 years ago. Those upgrades never happened. The power lines running through our neighborhood were strung on wooden poles, many of them over 30 years old, sagging under their own weight. Add heavy snow, ice accumulation, and 60-mile-per-hour winds, and you had a recipe for disaster. I grabbed my jacket and headed out into the increasingly heavy snowfall. My diesel generator sat in my garage, a Generac XG10000 that I'd purchased 2 years ago after a summer brownout. I'd spent months getting the proper permits, installing the transfer switch, and ensuring everything was up to code. The HOA had fought me on it, of course. Diane had sent me a cease and desist letter claiming generators were unsightly and disrupted the aesthetic harmony of the community. I'd hired a lawyer. The generator stayed. Now, as I checked the fuel levels and ran a quick diagnostic, I heard footsteps crunching through the snow behind me. "Marcus, what are you doing?" I turned to find my neighbor, Beth, standing at the edge of my driveway. She was bundled in a puffy coat, her breath forming clouds in the freezing air. Beth was one of the few neighbors who actually talked to me like a human being instead of an HOA violation waiting to happen. "Storm prep," I said, gesturing to the generator. "This one's going to be bad, Beth. Really bad." She frowned, glancing up at the thickening snow. "The weather report said maybe 6 inches. The weather report is wrong." I pulled up the National Weather Service data on my phone and showed her. "See this low-pressure system? It's stalling right over us. We're looking at 18 to 24 inches, sustained winds over 50 miles per hour. The power's going to go out, and it's going to stay out for a while." Beth's eyes widened. "Should I do something? Fill your bathtubs with water. Charge everything. If you have a fireplace, stock up on wood. And stay warm." I hesitated. "If things get really bad, my door's open. I'll have power and heat." She nodded slowly, then hurried back to her house. I spent the next hour securing my property. By 10 a.m., the snow was falling so heavily I could barely see across the street. By noon, the wind had picked up, howling through the trees and sending drifts swirling through the air like ghostly dancers. That's when Diane showed up. She came marching through the snow in her white Lexus SUV, parking in front of my house with the engine running. I watched through my window as she climbed out, clutching her ridiculous designer purse, and stomped up to my front door. I opened it before she could knock. "Marcus Thompson," she said, her voice sharp and nasal. "We need to talk about your generator." I stared at her. "You're serious?" "Completely. You're running that monstrosity right now, aren't you? I can hear it from the street. It's creating noise pollution, and several neighbors have complained." "Diane," I interrupted, "there's a historic blizzard happening right now. In case you haven't noticed." She waved a dismissive hand, snowflakes catching in her perfectly coiffed blonde hair. "That's precisely my point. During community emergencies, we need to maintain decorum and..." "The power's going to go out," I said flatly. Probably within the next few hours. When it does, this entire neighborhood is going to be without electricity for days. Days, Diane. My generator is the only reason I'll have heat and light. She laughed. Actually laughed. It was a shrill, condescending sound that made my jaw clench. You engineers are always so dramatic, she said. The power company knows what they're doing. We have underground lines in most of the development. Only in the newer section. The original phase, where we are, is all above ground. And those poles are ancient. Diane's smile didn't waver. Well, I'm sure they're perfectly adequate. In any case, you need to shut down that generator immediately, or I'll be forced to issue a formal violation. I felt something snap inside me. 5 years of petty tyranny, 5 years of ridiculous rules and power trips, all culminating in this moment of spectacular stupidity. Issue whatever you want, I said quietly. I'm not turning off my generator. And when the power goes out, don't come knocking on my door for help. Her face flushed red. How dare you? Have a nice day, Diane. I closed the door in her face. Through the window, I watched her stomp back to her SUV, slip on a patch of ice, catch herself on the hood, and then drive away with her tires spinning in the snow. 3 hours later, the lights flickered. I was sitting in my living room, monitoring the storm on my laptop, when the power wavered once, twice, then died completely. Outside, I could hear the transformer explode with a sharp crack like a gunshot. Sparks briefly lit up the swirling snow. The neighborhood plunged into darkness. My generator, already running on standby, kicked in immediately. My lights stayed on. My heat kept flowing. I pulled up the power company's outage map and watched as red dots spread across Pinecrest Meadows like a rash. 734 customers without power. My phone started ringing. It was Beth. Marcus, oh my God, the power. I know. Are you okay? It's already getting cold. My kids are scared. Come over. Bring them, bring blankets, bring whatever you need. Within an hour, Beth and her 2 kids were camped out in my living room. Then my next-door neighbor Jerry showed up, sheepish and freezing. Then the elderly couple from 3 houses down. By nightfall, I had 11 people in my house, all grateful for warmth and light. Diane's house, directly across the street, sat dark and silent. I tried not to feel smug about it. I really did. The storm raged for 36 hours straight. The news was calling it the worst blizzard in 40 years. Snow totals hit 23 inches, with drifts over 4 feet in some areas. Power lines collapsed under the weight of ice. Transformers exploded. Roads became impassable. And through it all, my generator purred steadily in the garage, keeping my small refugee camp warm and fed. On the second night, someone knocked on my door around 9 p.m. I opened it to find Diane standing there, her designer coat dusted with snow, her face pale and drawn. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. Marcus, she said quietly. My house is freezing. The fireplace isn't enough, and my phone died, and I can't. She trailed off, pride and desperation warring on her face. I could have said a lot of things in that moment. I could have reminded her of every petty violation, every condescending lecture, every time she'd made my life harder for no reason other than her own need for control. I could have closed the door in her face the way she'd metaphorically closed the door on my concerns dozens of times. Instead, I stepped aside. Come in, I said. Get warm. She stared at me, shocked. But after what I said. It's negative 15 degrees out there with the wind chill, I said. Nobody deserves to freeze. Diane stepped inside, and I watched her take in the scene, Beth and her kids asleep on the couch, Jerry playing cards with the elderly couple at the kitchen table, the warm glow of electric lights that seemed like a miracle in the surrounding darkness. She started crying. I'm sorry, she whispered. You were right. You were right about everything, and I was too stubborn and stupid to listen. I handed her a mug of hot coffee. Sit down, Diane. We'll talk about it when the storm's over. The power didn't come back on for 4 days. When it finally did, the neighborhood emerged from the blizzard like survivors of some apocalyptic event. People talked in hushed tones about how they'd survived, sharing stories of near disasters and close calls. And everyone knew that Marcus Thompson's generator had been a lifeline. The next HOA meeting was the following week. Diane stood at the podium, looking tired but somehow more human than I'd ever seen her. "I'm proposing an amendment to our bylaws," she announced. "Backup generators will no longer require special approval. In fact, I think we should encourage them." And Marcus Thompson. She looked directly at me. "Thank you. You saved lives, including mine." The room erupted in applause. I didn't say anything. I just nodded. Sometimes being right isn't about vindication. Sometimes it's just about being prepared when everyone else isn't, and having the grace to help anyway. Even when they laughed at your warnings. Especially then.